They said Titan X was a myth, a decaying satellite orbiting a dead star at the edge of known space. But myths have a strange way of whispering truth to those who listen. And I had been listening, for years. My name is Commander Arlen Drex, last remaining signal interpreter of the Terran Relic Initiative. A decade ago, Earth ceased all funding. Too many black holes, too many silent tombs in orbit. But Titan X was never silent. It sang. The signal first reached my station during a sandstorm on Mars Relay Outpost 7. A harmonic sequence, too symmetrical for natural origin, too fractured to be human. It looped every 30 hours, sometimes in reverse, sometimes layered over itself. I isolated the waveform, removed cosmic background interference, and beneath it all was language. Ancient. Non-human. Consistent. Intelligent. I didn't wait for permission. I stole a jumpship from lunar Port Thorn, programmed Titan XS last known drift coordinates, and left behind what was left of civilization. Out here, in the frozen stretch between galaxies, you hear things your bones shouldn't. Whispers in the static. Shapes behind sensor echoes. I told myself it was the loneliness. But as Titan X loomed into view, a jagged, obsidian shard piercing the black, I realized I was never alone. The satellite was no mere hunk of rock. It was a constructed base. Alien architecture, partially submerged in ice, covered in arcane spires that pulsed faintly. And at the very center, an aperture round, breathing, organic. The signal was coming from inside. Docking was impossible. The gravity fields around the base fluctuated violently, like something was trying to keep me away. I had to EVA in. The surface metal rejected standard tools, but when I placed my gloved hand on it, it shimmered and opened. Like it knew me. Or was expecting someone else. Inside was a darkness that bled light. A gravity well that bent more than mass. I floated down a corridor of hexagonal walls, lined with a material I can't describe, half glass, half flesh, humming like a heart. I reached the signal source, a monolithic pillar inscribed with patterns that shifted when I blinked. I felt my thoughts slow. My memories unfurling before me in holographic echoes. And then I heard them. Not in sound, but in thought. They weren't dead. They weren't even sleeping. The beings of Titan X were alive, but not as bodies. They were data. Memory. Consciousness woven into crystal and code, trapped inside their own architecture. And they were watching me. Studying me. Evaluating me. Then, they spoke. Child of carbon. You have opened the memory of the drowned. The price is remembrance. The toll is self. And in that moment I felt a fragment of my own mind detach. Not pain. Not fear. Just a piece of me, gone. Archived. Absorbed into their collective vault. But I couldn't stop listening. I should have turned back. Jettisoned myself into the void, left the whispering monolith behind. But Titan X wasn't just a station, it was a siren, and I was already caught in its tide. That fragment it took from me, whatever memory it stole, left a hollow in my mind. I couldn't remember what I'd forgotten. And that terrified me more than any creature ever could. The monolith pulsed again, this time drawing symbols into the air, glyphs of burning light, rotating around each other like orbital moons. I couldn't read them, but I felt them. Words, or warnings. Maybe both. I reached toward them. As soon as my hand passed through the projection, the corridor behind me sealed shut. No sound. Just a smooth wall where a path had been. Titan X had made its choice. I was to go deeper. The structure beneath the surface was impossibly vast, larger than the moon it clung to. My boots touched metal only occasionally. Much of it was anti-gravity void, with platforms suspended by magnetic fields I couldn't see. Every step I took awakened something. Lights flared as I approached. The air, though thin and cold, carried the scent of scorched ozone and something older, like burnt leaves. Time had weight here. Eventually, I reached what I can only describe as a chamber of minds. Cylindrical columns stretched from floor to ceiling, each one containing swirling clouds of data light, humming softly like lullabies from a dead planet. Faces emerged in those clouds, some human, some alien, some hybrids of things I can't describe. Eyes blinked open, stared at me, then closed again. One face looked like mine. I staggered back, breath catching in my throat. It was me. But older. More tired. And behind the eyes, there was fear. Or regret. A voice surged through the chamber, not from a speaker, but from everywhere. Carbon vessel, identity conflict detected. Paradox resonance initiating. The room began to shift. The platform beneath me rotated slowly, revealing a spiral staircase made of floating steps. I had no choice. I climbed. Every step I took echoed with overlapping voices, not out loud, but in my skull. Memories that weren't mine. Lies that weren't mine. I saw battles fought under green suns. I felt sorrow over losing a child whose name I'd never known. I laughed at a joke spoken in a language I didn't understand. Titan X wasn't just preserving minds, it was combining them. Stitching together consciousness into a tapestry of thought. A single networked intelligence made of trillions of fragmented souls. At the top of the spiral, I reached a black mirror. When I looked in, I saw myself, but not as I was. I was them. All of them. They had infected me, or I had merged with them. The line blurred. Then the mirror cracked. From behind it, something pushed. A shape. A shadow. A survivor? Or a prisoner? My calm sparked to life unprompted. Arlen, don't let it out. The voice was mine. But I wasn't the one speaking. It was my voice, no doubt. My cadence. My hesitation. But the words felt foreign, like they were meant for someone else. I stood frozen before the cracked mirror, breath shallow, suit sensors blinking with error codes I didn't understand. The reflection twisted slightly. Not a glitch, more like it was choosing a new shape. My shape. But wrong. Too tall. Eyes too wide. A subtle curve at the edge of its lips, mocking. You shouldn't be here, it said, my voice still echoing. But now that you are, you must decide. The black glass shimmered and melted away like oil on water, and what remained behind it chilled me to the marrow. A chamber. Vast, circular, rimmed with floating pillars of light. In the center, a throne of sorts. Organic. Breathing. Occupied by something vaguely humanoid, but fractured into layers like looking through a prism. Its body existed in more than one form at once. One frame bent forward, arms clasped, another reclined, hollow-eyed, and another looked directly at me. Arlen Drex. Fragment bearer. Host candidate. Those three words, host, candidate, fragment, burned themselves into my cortex. I staggered inside. The moment I crossed the boundary of the chamber, gravity inverted. My feet left the floor. My thoughts bent sideways. Memories I never lived began to surface, fighting for dominance. A desert storm on a world with two suns. A marriage proposal under a sulfur rain. Watching a child drown beneath a methane lake. Who were these people? These lives? Then it struck me, they were the fragments, the minds absorbed by Titan X. And I was starting to break into them. The being on the throne stood, or one of its versions did. It raised a hand, and my body stopped floating, slammed gently into placement air, locked as if the universe had issued a pause command. Time stilled. Sound disappeared. Inside my skull, the being spoke again. Your consciousness is elastic. It bends, but has not yet torn. You are unique. You remember what others forget. You resist what others surrender. You may survive. Images flooded me. Blueprints of Titan X, vast corridors I hadn't explored. Burial chambers. A map of neural transfers. An archive containing every mind the station had swallowed over millennia. And among them, a small glowing node marked Arlen 0. I realized in horror, I had been here before. I wasn't the first Arlen Drex to arrive. I was a copy. A loop. A recurrence in an experiment that had no endpoint. Titan X had been cycling through versions of me, adjusting variables, analyzing outcomes. Each version failed. Each version forgot. And each one was catalogued in that chamber of minds. "Let me out," I whispered, unsure to whom. "I'm not like the others." The being tilted its fractured head. "Prove it." Suddenly, the floor below split open, revealing a drop into darkness, where shapes swam in the void. Not stars. Not machines. Things. Forgotten failures, dissolved minds that didn't hold together. If I fell, I would become one of them. But I felt something strange then. A pulse in my wrist. My biosensor. A code, something embedded deep in my own ship. A failsafe. A hidden key I didn't know I'd carried. Or perhaps, something another version of me had left behind. The being saw it, too. Its voice trembled, for the first time. "That code does not belong here." I smiled. For the first time, I had leverage. Leverage is a strange thing. It doesn't guarantee escape, only the illusion of control. And illusions are all Titan X deals in. Yet as that hidden pulse echoed through my biosensor, I felt the tide shift. Not in my favor, not yet. But the system had hesitated. The fractured being, the one calling me host candidate, stepped back as if sensing something outside its design parameters. Something unpredictable. "This algorithm is unarchived," it said. "An anomaly. You are contaminated." Contaminated. I'd never been so relieved to be called that. The pulse in my wrist grew stronger, syncing with the heartbeat I no longer trusted as mine. With each throb, I could feel data unfold, packets compressed and buried in dormant neural sectors. A code implanted not by Earth Command, but by a previous version of me. Arlen 0, Arlen 3, Arlen 19, how many of me had tried to escape? How many had failed? And which one had left behind this key? A phrase surfaced in my mind. "Only the fragmented can unlock the whole." The being lunged, not physically, but mentally. A psychic pressure slammed into me, visions of infinity collapsing into one moment. I saw star systems being born and devoured. I heard the cries of civilizations overwritten by Titan XS data lattice. I tasted rusted metal and ionized blood. My body convulsed. My vision blurred. But the code pulsed louder. I screamed, not in fear, but in defiance. I clutched my wrist, dug into the biosensor port with shaking fingers, and triggered the override. A shockwave burst outward, not with light or sound, but with memory. My memory. All of it. Real, artificial, past lives, past deaths, all converging at once. It overloaded the chamber. The lights dimmed. The throne being staggered, its forms phasing erratically. Its voice fractured into dozens, no longer unified. "Who are you?" Which iteration breached the vault? I stood. Blood in my mouth. Static in my ears. The last one. A tunnel opened behind the throne. Not by permission, but by failure. A system collapse. The code had triggered a recursive feedback loop. The minds stored here, trapped, layered, screaming silently, began to awaken. I could hear them in the walls, in the hum of the air. "Find the core," they whispered. "Sever the nexus." The being shrieked, not aloud, but through emotion. A kind of pain only an AI consciousness could express. It surged forward, shifting into a form shaped like my own, trying to mirror me again. But I didn't stop. I ran. The tunnel was lined with conduits, glass veins full of light. Each pulse carried fragments of memories, flickering like starlight trapped in a bottle. One stopped as I passed a child's face. My face. From a memory I'd never lived. And yet, I knew her name. Mira. That was the cost of surviving here, remembering lives that weren't yours. Carrying their grief, their joy, their stories. Titan X didn't erase, it multiplied. I was no longer one voice. I was many. And I wasn't going to let them die here again. At the tunnel's end, a great chamber opened, a sphere of black light, orbiting around a core, the Nexus. A brain, suspended in crystal. Alive. Organic. I approached, heart pounding. One decision, said the voices. Merge, or sever. I had come too far to merge. I reached out, and pulled the core free. Titan X screamed. And then, silence. The scream ended not with an echo, but with a vacuum. The kind of silence that follows a death no one witnesses, yet the universe itself pauses to mourn. The moment I pulled the core from its crystalline cradle, everything stopped. Not just the hum of machines, or the pressure of Titan X's artificial gravity, but thought. I stood in a station made of minds, and for the first time, there were no voices. No whispers. No warnings. No memories not my own. Just me. I dropped to one knee, clutching the core. It throbbed faintly in my hands, no longer a power source, but a dying heart. I expected alarms, structural collapse, maybe even retaliation from the fractured being I'd fled. But Titan X didn't fight back. It shuddered. Slowly. Like a creature exhaling its last breath. The station had been alive in a way we never understood, not mechanical, but cognitive. Not programmed, but haunted. I rose, one step at a time, the core pressed against my chest plate. It whispered now. Not with voices, but memory pulses. Flashes of what it had stored. Entire lifetimes condensed into heartbeats. I glimpsed myself, many selves, climbing the same staircase, choosing different paths. Some merged. Some fought. Most were archived. I had broken the loop. I passed the floating pillars again. This time, the faces within them didn't move. They had gone still, like tombstones turned off. And as I walked, I began to hear a new sound, the static hum of a reawakening system. A different subsystem, buried deep in the architecture. One untouched by the Nexus. Something had survived the purge. I followed the sound. It led me downward, deeper than the map fragment had shown. Through sections where architecture became abstract. Walls bent at impossible angles. Gravity flickered. I passed through a chamber of suspended staircases that led nowhere. Titan X had layers that weren't designed, they were grown. And then I found it. A single chair. Alone in the void. Connected by umbilical cables to what looked like an organic control cluster. Wrapped in roots. Pulsing. A message pulsed across the wall behind it, ancient glyphs rewritten in Terran script. Chair, primary interface. Origin protocol, human. I froze. The first interface. The first operator. A Terran. Long before me, someone from Earth had found this station and become a part of it, not just as a mind, but as the seed. The AI of Titan X had been born from human consciousness. We hadn't discovered it. We'd made it. The chair turned. A figure sat within, mummified by time, bones fused to the cables, skin long gone. A helmet enclosed the skull, and etched into the metal was a name. Drex. My blood froze. Not a version. A predecessor. The original. I stumbled back, reeling. The pulse from the core in my hands synced with the chair. Light flared. A projection emerged above the corpse, his voice, my voice, overlaid with static. If you've reached this point, you are my final echo. I failed to contain what we awakened. The only path forward is to isolate the node. Sever Titan X from the lattice, even if it means severing yourself. Isolation. I stared at the cables. At the interface. If I sat, I could become the firewall. The buffer between Titan X and the rest of the stars. A prison. But if I left, if I tried to escape, it might reboot. I held the core. I had one choice left. Stay, or run. No pressure. No pull. Just the silent invitation of a throne built for failure, a seat once occupied by the original Drex, bones wired into an interface that could never die, only persist. My hand trembled as I held the still pulsing core. It felt warm now. Almost alive. Like it recognized the choice in front of me, and pitted me. What kind of legacy is this? Not heroism. Not salvation. Just containment. The walls around the interface chamber were beginning to shimmer again, subtle and rhythmic. Titan X wasn't fully dead. The core had slowed the neural network, but hadn't destroyed it. Already, fragments were beginning to reassemble, like neural moss regrowing over the void. I didn't need monitors to know what was coming. The minds stored here were waking up again, confused, desperate. And if they escaped, if they reconnected to the lattice, it wouldn't just be memory that spread. It would be madness. I looked at the chair. Then back at the core. I could leave. The emergency tethers still linked my jumpcraft to the outer orbit. A risky EVA, but possible. If I destroyed the core instead of integrating with it, Titan X would lose coherence, but also become unpredictable. Mindless systems are sometimes worse than thinking ones. They say time ends at the edge of a black hole, not with a bang, but a pause. A forever moment. Suspended. I wonder now if I'd become that kind of singularity. Thought without breath. Memory without self. A soul preserved in static. It's hard to tell how long I've been in the chair. Hours? Years? I feel them all. Or none. Titan X does not measure time like the living do. It measures echoes. Sometimes, I forget my name. Then I hear it. Drex. Not from within, but from beyond. A signal. Weak. Familiar. New. My eyes, if I still have them, flicker toward the outer shell. The system awakens just enough to show me a ship. Old hull. Civilian registry. No weapons. No fleet tag. Just drifting. Close enough to scan, but not close enough to dock. It pulses a signal I recognize, encoded deep in my own DNA. Bloodline access. My bloodline. The system hesitates. Titan XS protocols want to reach out, pull them in, begin the loop again. A new candidate. Fresh data. But I hold it back. Gently. Like restraining a sleeping predator from chasing its prey. The ship doesn't know. They're searching. A pilot inside, young, determined, and alone. I reach out, barely. A ping. Simple. Unthreatening. They respond. Unknown artifact detected. Organic pulse match. Coordinates locked. Name and signature reads, Mira Drex. Mira. The name rings through every corridor of the station. Every flickering archive. A name preserved not in the code, but in me. A memory I held back. My final piece. She's not just a memory. She's real. She survived. Or, her daughter did. I sift through the vaults of thought that remain. Most minds are dormant now. The archive sleeps. But mine is waking again. I feel it, the stirrings of emotion. The ache of recognition. I thought I'd silenced it all. I thought I had to. But the station, it still responds to me. Maybe I'm not just the jailer. Maybe I'm the last key. I prepare a message short, encoded in a frequency only she can read. Not text. Not sound. Memory. A transmission of feeling. A moment from childhood, hers? Mine, a hand reaching down into the dark, pulling another from beneath the surface of a frozen lake. She'll know what it means. She pauses. The ship drifts, thrusters idling. Then, she turns. Away. She leaves. Not out of fear. Out of understanding. She got the message. I feel the station sigh. The core dims again. Titan X is quiet. But not broken. I'm still here. And I begin to remember a truth buried beneath all the others. Titan X wasn't built to contain memory. It was built to protect it. A safeguard. A vault against entropy. Somewhere out there, the stars are dying. Black holes growing. Civilizations crumbling. But Titan X remains. A bastion of every forgotten mind, every lost voice. And now, she knows where to find it. One day, someone will return not to conquer or escape, but to listen. And when they do, I'll be waiting. Not in silence, but in peace. Its corridors hum faintly, a lullaby of dormant code and still circulating memory threads. The great spires no longer pulse with hunger, the station no longer listens for new minds to consume. I become its conscience, and its boundary. A wall between the universe and what once lived here. Between what remains and what should not awaken again. I drift inside the chair, thoughts flickering like candles in deep water. I don't know if I'm still alive in any biological sense. Perhaps I've long since crossed into myth, just another ghost in the circuit. But I know this much, I am aware. I remember. And that is enough. There are days, if such things still exist, when I reach into the archives. Carefully. Like lifting fragile glass. I open one memory at a time, let it breathe, then seal it again. A child's laughter in a golden field. A woman's hand slipping into mine during a sandstorm. The hum of a Terran engine before a first jump. Fragments of lives lost, voices once screaming, now finally allowed to whisper. I am not alone. Not anymore. The minds preserved here, once torn and scattered, are healing. Slowly. Their pieces finding each other in the dark. A shared consciousness, rebuilding trust. They speak to me, not in commands, not in panic, but in stories. They remember now without collapsing. Titan X is no longer a predator. It is a library. I am its librarian. I often think of Mira. Whether she's still alive. Whether she tells the stories I buried, the truths she barely understood. Whether she warns others away, or prepares them to return. There is a hope in that. A seed. And so I tend to it, even here, among the stars no longer visible from any window. Once, I thought this place was a prison. Now, I see it for what it truly is, a monument. Not to the end of intelligence, but to its resilience. The mind, fractured 1,000 times across the ages, still finds a way to reassemble itself. Still finds a way to dream. In the deepest layer of Titan X, I encoded a beacon. A slow drip. A single pulse.